Ever cracked open your medicine cabinet and wondered just how those pills got there? Like, what's the journey they took?
It's not something we often think about, is it?
Right. Today's deep dive takes us beyond those prescriptions into the world of pharmaceutical import-export.
We're talking about the professionals who make sure those global supply chains actually flow. Import-export managers, to be precise.
Import-export managers. Now, that's a side of pharmaceuticals we rarely see.
Absolutely. I mean, they're the ones meticulously coordinating the movement of, let's face it, life-saving medications across borders, navigating what can only be described as a maze of regulations just to make sure those medicines arrive
Safely.
safely, on time. It's a big responsibility.
Huge. And to guide us through this intricate world, we're turning to a career platform, actually. It's called RoleCatcher.
Interesting. I've heard of them.
They have this in-depth guide all about this very rule, lays out everything you'd want to know, the day-to-day tasks, the skills you need to thrive.
It's not your typical desk job, is it?
That's the thing, and RoleCatcher makes that very clear. Forget those spreadsheets, the endless meetings.
More like global logistics, constant communication, really having your finger on the pulse of international trade.
So, less about pushing paper, more about
No.
orchestrating a symphony of shipments, high-stakes shipments at that.
Precisely. It's high stakes because you're dealing with, people's health.
Right, these aren't just any goods.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher, they give this great example in their guide. Imagine a shipment of vaccines, temperature sensitive, obviously.
Okay, I'm picturing it. Vaccines, gotta stay cold.
Right. And they're en route, let's say, from Europe to a developing country. Any delay at customs.
Or anywhere along the way, really.
Exactly. Any break in that cold chain.
Could be disastrous.
Exactly. And that's where our import-export manager comes in. Say,
They're the ones anticipating those roadblocks.
yes. Troubleshooting in real time, making sure those vaccines get where they need to be.
They're like those behind-the-scenes heroes you never hear about.
Guardians of global health, you could say. Making sure those medications reach, well, every corner of the world.
Speaking of reaching every corner, the guide also talks about all the different people these managers work with, and it's quite the cast of characters.
Oh, absolutely. Suppliers, freight forwarders,
Wow.
customs officials, they're in constant communication with all of them, building those relationships to make sure everything goes smoothly.
And it's not just external, right? There are internal teams as well.
Of course. Production, quality control,
Yeah.
making sure the inventory's there, that everything's compliant.
They're like the glue holding it all together.
They really are. You start to appreciate how much they need to understand, not just about pharmaceuticals, but about global trade as a whole.
It's this intersection, right, where pharmaceuticals meet.
International regulations, tariffs, trade agreements, and it's constantly evolving.
It's like a high-stakes chess game, wouldn't you say?
With life-saving medications as the pieces.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher, they don't shy away from the pressure involved in all of this.
No, they're very upfront about that. Long hours come with the territory, tight deadlines.
Knowing that even a small misstep could have huge consequences.
But for the right person, someone who thrives under that kind of pressure,
Someone who's meticulous but also adaptable.
it can be an incredibly rewarding path. There's a lot of demand for that skill set.
So not your average 9 to 5, that's for sure. We're talking high-stakes, global, requiring deep knowledge of two complex worlds, pharmaceuticals and international trade.
Two worlds that really intertwine in this role.
They do. But let's break it down, get specific. What skills are we actually talking about here?
Well, RoleCatcher, they have this whole section on competencies. It's really interesting to see what they prioritize.
Hit us with it. What makes a top-notch import-export manager in the pharmaceutical world?
It's a real mix, actually. Hard skills, soft skills. Makes sense, given how many hats these managers wear.
Right, it's not just one thing.
No, not at all. You need a firm understanding of international trade regulations, for one.
Okay, so knowing the rules of the game. But we're talking global here, right?
Exactly. And it's not just like generic customs procedures. Think about shipping temperature-controlled medication.
Right, because if those meds get too hot or too cold.
Exactly. Or navigating import regulations of, say, a developing country. Every country has its own nuances.
It's a whole different ballgame depending where you're shipping to.
Exactly. And that's where critical thinking comes in.
Ah, so you've got to be able to think on your feet.
All the time. RoleCatcher actually lists that as one of the top competencies, even above, like, industry-specific knowledge.
Which is interesting because you'd think knowing the pharmaceutical world inside and out would be number one.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
But it goes to show you could know everything about, say, how a certain drug is made.
But if you can't troubleshoot a logistical nightmare in real time.
Exactly. It's about problem solving, seeing those hurdles before they even pop up.
Anticipating, being proactive.
Yes. And then, of course, you've got communication. Can't forget that. These managers are the link between suppliers, regulators, internal teams,
So many moving parts.
and they need to keep everyone on the same page. That takes serious communication skills.
Especially across different languages, cultures.
Oh, absolutely. Which is why RoleCatcher highlights active listening as so crucial.
Because it's not just about giving orders.
No, it's about understanding different perspectives, coordinating everyone's efforts, making sure the whole operation runs smoothly.
Like a well-oiled machine. Speaking of which, the guide also dives into technology a bit, right?
They do. Remember all those digital platforms, automation tools?
Yeah.
Those aren't just buzzwords.
Right, those are changing the game.
Exactly. Import-export managers, they're using sophisticated software now, tracking shipments, managing all that documentation.
Even navigating customs procedures, from what I hear. It's amazing what technology can do these days.
It really is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not enough to just know the ins and outs of international trade. You've got to be tech savvy too, comfortable with data, able to troubleshoot if something goes wrong.
It's like this blend of old school knowledge and new school tech skills.
Which is interesting because then RoleCatcher talks about career progression.
Okay, so how do you actually become an import-export manager? Is there a typical path?
They lay out a kind of roadmap, actually, from like coordinator to manager, showing how the skills and responsibilities change at each stage.
So if you're just starting out, you know where to aim for.
Exactly. And it's not just about climbing the ladder either. It's about professional development in general.
Staying up to date, because the field's always evolving.
Always. New regulations, new technologies. The guide really stresses the importance of continuous learning. Professional organizations, conferences, online courses.
Sounds like you'd never be bored in this line of work.
Never a dull moment. Which is great if you're someone who thrives in a fast-paced, ever-changing environment.
It's definitely not for everyone. Now, RoleCatcher isn't just about understanding the career, right? They actually help you land the job, too.
Right. Their CV builder and interview prep sections are really cool.
Yeah.
Especially for a role this specialized.
So how does that work?
Well, imagine you're prepping for an interview, right?
No.
You've read the guide, you've got the knowledge.
But how do you actually talk about it? That's always the tricky part.
Exactly. Like, you might understand international trade regulations inside and out. But then they hit you with, tell me about a time you navigated a challenging customs situation.
And suddenly your mind goes blank. Been there. So RoleCatcher helps you with that.
They do. They have sample interview questions with suggested answers, gives you a framework, helps you structure your thoughts.
So you're not caught off guard. Smart.
And their CV builder helps you really showcase your experience in a way that aligns with what employers are looking for.
So it's not just a list of your past jobs. It's about highlighting those key skills we've been talking about, right?
Exactly. Critical thinking, communication, adaptability.
Yeah.
They're helping job seekers connect the dots between their experience and what this very specific field demands.
It's like they're giving you the tools to craft the perfect pitch.
Exactly. Now, we've talked a lot about the day-to-day, the skills, how to even get into this field. But let's zoom out for a second.
Okay, bigger picture.
What kind of impact do these import-export managers actually have?
It's easy to get lost in the weeds, right? All those details, the regulations.
Right. But at the end of the day,
It's about people getting the medication they need.
exactly. We're talking about global health, really. Think about it. A clinic in a rural part of Africa finally getting those anti-malarial drugs they desperately need. Or a hospital in South America getting access to cutting-edge cancer treatments.
Treatments they might not have been able to get otherwise.
Exactly. And none of that happens without those import-export managers working behind the scenes.
They're the link, making sure those meds cross oceans, borders, whatever it takes.
And knowing that, that has to be a motivating factor for them. It's not just a job. It's about making a real difference.
Absolutely. And the pharmaceutical industry, it's not slowing down anytime soon, is it? Always new breakthroughs, new treatments.
Which just adds to the complexity. Think about it. Personalized medicine, for example.
Okay, yeah, that's very specific to each patient.
Exactly. Or imagine having to coordinate the global distribution of a brand new vaccine.
Talk about pressure.
Right. These are the kinds of challenges that are really going to shape the future of this whole field.
And challenges that will likely involve even more technology, right? I mean, RoleCatcher touched on that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're already seeing it happen. Automation, streamlining a lot of the processes, data analytics.
Giving those managers even more information at their fingertips.
Exactly. And as that technology gets even more advanced, Who knows what kind of impact it'll have?
Which leads us to our final thought-provoking question for our listeners.
Hit us with it.
How will all of this technological change, this evolution, how will it reshape the role of the import-export manager in the years to come?
It's exciting to think about, isn't it? Will we reach a point where AI is handling most of the regulatory stuff, freeing up those managers to really focus on strategy, problem solving?
Or maybe it'll be more about those technologies enhancing the skills they already have, giving them like real-time insight into global supply chains.
Being able to react to problems faster than ever before? The possibilities are really endless.
It really makes you think, well, I'd say this has been quite the eye-opening journey.
I'd agree. We really went beyond the medicine cabinet on this one, didn't we?
We did. We explored a world of global logistics, of constant change, of, let's be honest, really high stakes. But most importantly, we saw the impact this role has.
The impact on people's lives all over the world.
Absolutely. So a big thank you to RoleCatcher for giving us the inside scoop on this fascinating field. And to everyone listening, whether you're considering a career in import-export,
Or maybe you just never thought about where your medications come from.
right. Hopefully this deep dive is giving you something to think about. Until next time, keep exploring.